The Last Stand. The vast expanse of space above Mars blazed with the light of dying ships. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the TSS Prometheus as the remnants of humanity's defense fleet engaged the Valaxian Armada. Plasma torpedoes and energy beams crisscrossed the void, painting deadly constellations against the backdrop of stars. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. The Prometheus, humanity's most advanced warship, represented their last hope against an enemy that had pushed them to the brink of extinction. Lieutenant Marcus Rivera's fingers danced across his tactical console, Valaxian fleet advancing in standard crescent formation, counting 76 capital ships, supported by at least 200 fighters. They're moving cautiously after what happened at Europa. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Battle of Europa had been humanity's first significant victory against the Valaxians, though the cost had been steep. The alien empire had expected an easy conquest when they entered Sol system 6 months ago. Instead, they found themselves locked in a grinding war of attrition against a species that refused to submit. "Dr. Patel, is the quantum fold drive ready?" Sarah turned to the ship's chief scientist, a brilliant woman whose revolutionary theories had made the Prometheus possible. Arya Patel nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the holographic displays surrounding her station. "The drive is stable, Commander. But I must remind you, we've never attempted a combat deployment. The calculations suggest it will work, but the energy requirements are enormous." "We're out of alternatives," Sarah replied, watching as another human destroyer succumbed to Valaxian fire, its hull splitting apart in a silent explosion. "The evacuation ships need more time." Behind Mars, a convoy of civilian vessels was racing for the quantum gate, carrying the seeds of humanity's survival: scientists, engineers, artists, and families. If they could reach the gate, they would jump to a secret colony beyond Valaxian space. But first, they needed to get past the most powerful fleet in known space. The bridge crew tensed as proximity alerts blared. A squadron of Valaxian cruisers had broken formation, accelerating toward their position. The aliens had learned to fear human ingenuity. They wouldn't give the Prometheus time to spring whatever trap humanity had planned. "Multiple targeting locks," Marcus reported. "They're charging their main guns." Sarah straightened in her command chair. This was the moment that would determine not just the fate of the Prometheus, but possibly the survival of the human species. "All hands, battle stations. Dr. Patel, initiate quantum fold sequence. Lieutenant Rivera, target the Lid cruiser. Let's show them why they should have left Earth alone." The Prometheus hummed as its revolutionary drive spooled up. Sarah felt a slight vibration through the deck plates as power levels climbed past anything a human ship had ever attempted. Warning indicators flashed across multiple stations, but held just shy of critical. "Valaxian ships firing," Marcus announced. "Impact in 3 seconds." Sarah watched the incoming energy beams with an almost detached calm. Dr. Patel now. What happened next would be debated in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The Prometheus didn't dodge. It didn't raise shields. Instead, space itself seemed to fold around the ship like origami paper in the hands of a master artist. The Valaxian beams struck empty void where the Prometheus had been. Before the alien gunners could adjust their aim, the human warship reappeared behind their formation. But it wasn't just a simple teleportation. Reality rippled and distorted around the Prometheus, as if the ship existed in multiple locations simultaneously. "Multiple quantum fold points established," Arya reported, her voice tight with concentration. "Field stability at 87%. "Fire," Sarah ordered. The Prometheus's main guns opened up, but instead of firing from a single point, energy beams lanced out from 5 different positions, catching the Valaxian squadron in a devastating crossfire. Their shields, calibrated for conventional warfare, offered no protection against weapons firing from what seemed like impossible angles through space-time itself. 3 cruisers died in the first volley, their hulls torn apart by attacks that seemed to violate the laws of physics. The survivors tried to regroup, but their formations had been designed to counter traditional tactics. They had no doctrine for fighting a ship that could attack from multiple vectors simultaneously. Enemy squadron breaking formation, Marcus reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. They're falling back to the main fleet. But Sarah knew this was just the beginning. On her tactical display, she could see the Valaxian command ships moving to engage. Their admiral would not retreat in the face of a single human vessel, no matter how advanced. The real battle was about to begin. Dr. Patel, can we maintain multiple fold points against their entire fleet? Aria's hands flew across her console, making minute adjustments to the quantum field. The power drain is significant, Commander. We can hold it for maybe 20 minutes before we need to recharge. After that, she left the implications unspoken. 20 minutes. Sarah looked at the evacuation fleet's progress. They needed at least 30 to reach the quantum gate. Then we'll have to make those 20 minutes count. All hands, prepare for full engagement. We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. We're fighting for every human being who ever dreamed of reaching the stars. The Prometheus surged forward, its quantum fold drive bending reality around it like a lens. As the massive Valaxian fleet moved to engage, Sarah Chen prepared to write a new chapter in the history of warfare. But more than that, she prepared to prove that humanity would never go quietly into the dark. The battle that followed would change the galaxy forever. And it was just beginning. The impossible ship, High Admiral Krax of the Valaxian Empire, had conquered 17 star systems and subjugated dozens of species in his long career. But never had he encountered anything like this. From his command throne aboard the dreadnought Eternal Dominion, he watched as a single human vessel defied everything he knew about space warfare. Impossible, he muttered, his scaled hands gripping the armrests as another squadron of his ships fell to the Prometheus's quantum fold attacks. The human vessel seemed to exist in multiple places at once, striking from angles that shouldn't exist in normal space. High Admiral, his tactical officer called out, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the human ship. They're unlike anything in our database. Krax's inner eyelids flickered in frustration. The Valaxian Empire had ruled the galaxy through technological superiority for centuries. Their ships were supposed to be invincible, their weapons unstoppable. Yet here they were, their mighty fleet thrown into chaos by a single vessel. Aboard the Prometheus, Commander Sarah Chen watched as the quantum fold drive continued to rewrite the rules of engagement. Her ship danced through space-time, appearing and disappearing like a ghost, striking from impossible vectors that left the Valaxian gunners firing at shadows. Power levels at 60%, Dr. Puddle reported, her voice strained. The quantum field is becoming unstable. We need to be selective with our jumps. Sarah nodded, studying the tactical display. The Valaxian fleet had split into defensive clusters, trying to create overlapping fields of fire. It was a solid strategy against conventional attacks, but it made them predictable. Lieutenant Rivera, target their command and control nodes. Let's see how they fight blind. The Prometheus phased through space, emerging simultaneously at 3 different points around a Valaxian communications hub. Energy beams converged from multiple vectors, overwhelming its shields and reducing the station to molten debris. Across the battlefield, Valaxian ships suddenly lost coordination, their movements becoming erratic. Commander, Marcus called out, the evacuation fleet has reached 70% of the distance to the quantum gate. But we have a problem. The Valaxians are launching their Shadowhawk fighters. Sarah's jaw tightened. Shadowhawks were the elite of the Valaxian fleet, piloted by veterans who had perfected the art of space combat over decades of warfare. Their neural interfaces allowed them to react with supernatural speed, making them deadly even against superior technology. Dr. Patel, can we maintain quantum fold points against multiple small, fast-moving targets? Not effectively, Aria replied. The calculations become too complex. We'd risk field collapse. A new voice cut through the tension. "Commander, I have a suggestion." It was the Prometheus's tactical AI, Oracle, speaking for the first time since the battle began. "If we modify the quantum field to create microfolds instead of full spatial displacement, we could generate a cascade effect." Sarah leaned forward. "Explain." "Instead of moving the ship, we create thousands of small spatial distortions around the incoming fighters. They would essentially fly into a maze of their own fractured space-time." It was insane. It was brilliant. It was exactly the kind of thinking that had kept humanity alive against overwhelming odds. Do it. The space around the Prometheus shimmered as thousands of tiny quantum folds sprang into existence. The approaching Shadowhawks flew into what looked like a shattered mirror in space. Their superior reflexes and neural interfaces worked against them, unable to process the conflicting spatial information fast enough. Fighters collided with phantom images of themselves or disappeared into microfolds, emerging seconds later in completely different locations. High Admiral Krax watched in horror as his elite fighter squadrons dissolved into chaos. "By the first egg," he whispered, "what have they created?" But the Prometheus wasn't finished. While the Shadowhawks were scattered, the human ship struck at the heart of the Valaxian fleet. It quantum-folded directly above the Eternal Dominion, its weapons already firing. "Maximum evasive," Krax shouted, but it was too late. The Prometheus's beams struck from angles that bypassed his flagship's strongest shields, burning deep into its command structure. Secondary explosions rippled through the massive vessel as its power grid overloaded. "High Admiral," his bridge crew called out, "we're losing containment on the main reactor." For the first time in his career, Krax felt fear. Not just for himself, but for the future of his empire. If the humans had managed to create this technology while under siege, what else were they capable of? What would happen when they began building more ships like the Prometheus? The evacuation fleet was now 85% of the way to the quantum gate. But the Prometheus's revolutionary display of power had achieved something even more significant. It had shaken the Valaxian Empire's absolute confidence in its superiority. "All ships," Krax commanded, his voice heavy with the weight of his decision, "fall back to secondary positions. We must reassess our strategy." As the Valaxian fleet began its withdrawal, Sarah Chen allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. But she knew this was just the beginning. The quantum fold drive had changed everything, and the galaxy would never be the same. "Commander," Oracle announced, "I'm detecting unusual quantum signatures. The space-time distortions we've created, they're having an unexpected effect on local reality." Sarah turned to Dr. Patel, who was staring at her readings with a mixture of awe and concern. "What does this mean?" "It means," Arya replied slowly, "that we may have done more than just win a battle. We may have started a chain reaction that will reshape the very fabric of space itself." The war for humanity's survival had entered a new phase, and no one could predict where it would lead. Ripples across the stars. News of the battle at Mars spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings of all species gathered around holographic displays, watching footage of a single human warship defeating the mighty Valaxian fleet. The impossible had happened, and the ramifications were only beginning to unfold. In the crystalline chambers of the Meridian Conclave, the greatest scientific minds of the galaxy debated the implications. The Prometheus's quantum fold technology hadn't just changed warfare. It had demonstrated that the fundamental laws of space-time were more flexible than anyone had imagined. "The humans have achieved what we thought impossible," declared senior researcher Zixna, her bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with excitement. The Asterian scientist manipulated a holographic model of the Prometheus's quantum field effects. They didn't just bend space, they rewrote its local rules. Aboard the Prometheus, Dr. Arya Patel was discovering that those local rules were becoming increasingly unstable. She stood before the ship's senior staff in the conference room, her expression grave as she presented her findings. The quantum fold drive isn't just affecting space where we use it, she explained, pointing to a complex series of equations. It's creating cascading distortions that persist and grow, like ripples in a pond, but these ripples are in the fabric of reality itself. Commander Sarah Chen leaned forward, studying the data. The Prometheus had achieved its primary mission. The evacuation fleet had reached safety through the quantum gate, but their victory had come with unexpected consequences. What are we looking at, Doctor? Reality fractures, Area replied. Small at first, but growing. Areas where the normal laws of physics become uncertain. We're seeing them appear not just where we've used the drive, but in seemingly random locations across space. Lieutenant Rivera whistled softly. You're saying we broke the universe? Not broke. Oracle interjected, the AI's holographic avatar materializing above the conference table. Transformed. These fractures aren't destroying space-time. They're creating new possibilities. Think of them as evolutionary pressure on reality itself. The implications were staggering. The quantum fold drive hadn't just given humanity a weapon against the Galaxians. It had initiated a fundamental change in the structure of space itself. And that change was spreading. Across the galaxy, different species reacted to this development in their own ways. The Meridian Conclave saw it as the greatest scientific opportunity in millennia. The mystic Etherians believed it heralded a new age of transcendence. And the Galaxian Empire, they saw it as an existential threat. In his private chambers aboard the damaged Eternal Dominion, High Admiral Krax received a direct communication from the Galaxian Emperor himself. The ancient ruler's holographic image towered over Krax, his scales darkened with age and wisdom. The humans cannot be allowed to retain this technology, the Emperor declared, not just for the sake of our empire, but for the stability of the galaxy itself. You will assemble our entire fleet, High Admiral. Every ship, every warrior. We will end this before it goes too far. But it was already too far. On the edges of known space, patrol ships reported strange phenomena. Regions where time moved differently, where the boundaries between possible and impossible became blurred. The quantum fold drive had awakened something that had slumbered in the depths of spacetime, and now it was stirring. Back on the Prometheus, Sarah received reports from across human space. Their colonies were experiencing unusual events, technology operating in ways it shouldn't, physical constants shifting slightly, reality becoming more malleable. It's like the universe is learning from what we did, Arya mused, reviewing the data. The quantum fold drive showed reality that it could be more flexible. And now it's exploring those possibilities on its own. Commander, Oracle announced suddenly, I'm detecting massive fleet movements throughout Galaxian space. They're mobilizing everything they have. But that's not all. The AI's avatar flickered with concern. The reality fractures are concentrating around specific points in space. They're forming patterns. Sarah moved to the main viewport, watching as distant stars seemed to shimmer and shift. Humanity had wanted a weapon to ensure their survival. Instead, they had initiated a change that would reshape the galaxy itself. The question was no longer whether they would survive the Galaxian Empire. It was whether any of them were prepared for what the universe was becoming. Dr. Patel, she said finally, can we control these changes? Direct them somehow. Arya shook her head. I don't think anyone can control this now. But we might be able to understand it. To work with it instead of against it. She paused, looking at her latest calculations. The quantum fold drive didn't just give us a way to fight back, Commander. It gave us a way to evolve, not just as a species, but as part of reality itself. The implications hung in the air like a physical weight. Humanity had changed the rules of the game, but now the game was changing them in return. And somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, the first waves of the Galaxian Armada were approaching, determined to end this transformation before it could be completed. The next battle wouldn't just be for survival, it would determine the very nature of reality itself. And the Prometheus, the ship that had started it all, would need to find a way to finish what it had begun. The heart of the storm. Nexus 7 hung in space like a dark jewel, its massive orbital platforms bristling with the most powerful weapons in the Valaxian arsenal. The entire might of the Empire had gathered here, over 3,000 warships forming concentric rings around their most heavily fortified stronghold. High Admiral Crack stood on his new flagship's bridge, watching as reality itself seemed to waver at the edges of his vision. The reality fractures had grown. What began as subtle distortions had evolved into vast regions where the laws of physics became negotiable. Some ships of the Valaxian fleet had already been lost to these anomalies, vanishing into spaces between spaces or emerging changed in ways that defied explanation. The human's approach, his sensor officer reported, voice tight with tension. Single vessel, the Prometheus. Crax's inner eyelids flickered. One ship against thousands, but after what he'd witnessed at Mars, numbers meant nothing. All ships, battle formations. Whatever happens, the humans must not reach the Nexus. Aboard the Prometheus, Commander Sarah Chen studied the massive fleet arrayed before her. The past week had brought strange developments. The quantum fold drive had evolved, integrating with the ship's systems in ways Dr. Patel couldn't explain. Oracle, their AI, had changed too, growing more abstract, more connected to the fundamental forces they'd awakened. The reality fractures are intensifying, Aria reported from her station, her voice filled with wonder and concern. They're responding to our presence, Commander, like they're reaching out to us. Sarah watched as space rippled around her ship. The Prometheus no longer simply created quantum fold points. It existed in a state of constant quantum flux, as if it had become a living embodiment of the changes it had initiated. Oracle, she called out. Analysis. The AI's holographic form appeared, but it was different now, less humanoid, more a shifting pattern of light and possibility. The universe is approaching a threshold, Commander. The changes we initiated are reaching a critical point. The Valaxians sense this. It's why they've committed their entire fleet to stopping us. Lieutenant Rivera's hands moved across his tactical console. Multiple targeting locks. They're coordinating their fire, trying to saturate every possible quantum fold point we might use. They still think this is about warfare, Oracle observed. They don't understand what's really happening. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair. And what is happening, Oracle? Evolution. Not just of our ship or humanity, but of reality itself. The quantum fold drive showed the universe that change was possible. Now it's embracing that possibility. The first wave of Valaxian fire approached, a wall of energy that would have annihilated any conventional ship. But the Prometheus was no longer conventional. Reality bent around it, not through mechanical manipulation, but as if space itself recognized the ship as something special. Multiple reality fractures forming, Aria called out. They're protecting us, Commander. Like antibodies responding to an infection, but the infection is the old, rigid laws of physics. Sarah watched as Valaxian weapons fire disappeared into suddenly appearing distortions, emerging as harmless light, or simply ceasing to exist. The universe itself was taking sides. This isn't what the Valaxians fear most, Oracle said softly. They fear what comes next, what we represent. And what do we represent? Sarah asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Change, growth, evolution. The universe has been static for too long, bound by laws that were never meant to be permanent. We showed it another way. The Prometheus moved forward, not through quantum folding now, but through a new kind of movement that defied traditional physics. Reality rippled around them like water around a stone, creating patterns that spread across space-time. On his flagship, High Admiral Crax watched in horror as the impossible unfolded. The human ship wasn't fighting in any conventional sense. Instead, the space around it was transforming. Ships that ventured too close emerged changed, their technology operating on new principles, their crews experiencing reality in ways that defied Valaxian understanding. Hold formation. he commanded, but it was becoming difficult. Reality itself seemed to be unraveling around Nexus 7, not in a destructive way, but in a transformative one. It was as if space itself was waking up, becoming aware, and the Prometheus was its herald. "Dr. Patel," Sarah called out, "what are your readings showing?" Arya's voice was filled with awe. "The reality fractures aren't random anymore. They're forming patterns, networks. It's like the universe is building new neural pathways. Learning, growing. We're approaching the threshold," Oracle announced. "Soon, there will be no turning back. The change will cascade through all of reality." Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Humanity had created the quantum fold drive to survive, but they'd achieved something far more profound. They'd awakened the universe itself. "Commander," Marcus reported suddenly, "the Valaxian fleet, they're experiencing some kind of transformation. Their ships are changing." Through the viewport, Sarah watched as reality waves washed over the enemy fleet. Ships shifted, their forms becoming fluid, their technology adapting to the new laws of physics being born around them. Some fought against the change, their crews desperately trying to maintain the old order. Others embraced it, becoming something new. The battle for Nexus 7 wasn't being fought with weapons anymore. It was being fought with ideas, with the very concept of what was possible. And in that battle, humanity's greatest strength, their ability to adapt, to imagine, to evolve, had become their greatest weapon. "The threshold approaches," Oracle announced, its form now barely comprehensible as reality itself seemed to speak through it. "What comes next will change everything." Sarah Chin, commander of the ship that had started it all, watched as the universe trembled on the edge of transformation. The real question wasn't whether they would survive, it was what they would become. Dawn of a new era. The moment of transformation came not with violence, but with understanding. As the Prometheus hovered at the heart of the Valaxian fleet near Nexus 7, reality itself seemed to hold its breath. The quantum fold drive had evolved beyond its original purpose, becoming a catalyst for something far greater than its creators had ever imagined. Commander Sarah Chen watched as waves of change rippled through space around her ship. The tactical displays were useless now, showing impossible readings as reality rewrote itself. Dr. Arya Patel worked frantically at her station, trying to understand the cascade of transformations occurring around them. "The threshold," Oracle announced, its voice resonating with the fabric of space itself. "We've reached it." In that moment, everything changed. The reality fractures that had been spreading across the galaxy converged on Nexus 7, creating a phenomenon never before seen in the history of the universe. Space itself became conscious, aware, alive with possibilities that had lain dormant since the beginning of time. High Admiral Krax, watching from his flagship, felt it first, a sensation of expansion, as if his mind was suddenly capable of perceiving dimensions that had always existed but remained hidden. Around him, his crew experienced the same awakening. The rigid boundaries that had defined their understanding of reality dissolved, replaced by something far more profound. "What is this?" he whispered, watching as his own ship transformed, its technology adapting to laws of physics that were no longer fixed but fluid. The answer came not from the Prometheus, but from space itself. Images formed in the minds of every being in the fleet, human and Valaxian alike. They saw the universe as it truly was, not a dead, mechanical thing bound by immutable laws, but a living, growing entity capable of evolution and change. The universe was waiting for this, Oracle explained, waiting for a species that could imagine beyond the apparent limits of reality. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't our technology. It was our ability to dream of something more. In the hours that followed, a new order emerged, not one of conquest or dominion, but of exploration and growth. The Valaxian Empire transformed from a force of conquest into a coalition of seekers, united with humanity and other species in the pursuit of understanding this new reality they had helped create. The Prometheus, the ship that had started it all, became a symbol of this transformation. Its quantum-fold drive had shown the universe that change was possible, and in doing so, had awakened possibilities that had